So the key focused area is around the Hawkesbury, Nepean and the Georges tonight, but in particular the Hawkesbury, Nepean. We're based on the rain that's fallen and the rain we're forecasting to fall. We're expecting levels to continue to rise and to rise into major for some locations that haven't quite seen those flood levels yet. Earlier or last night we saw the upper reaches of the Nepean River see flood levels similar to what they saw in April, so near record levels. Around the Menangle area we saw flash flooding around Woronora, and now those floodwaters are moving downstream. North Richmond area and Windsor, we're expecting to see flood levels close to or likely higher than what they've seen over the previous few floods. So over the floods they saw in April this year and March, which were very high, and also in March last year. So those flood peaks will be coming in through tonight and tomorrow. And then as that floodwater moves further downstream to places like Wiseman's Ferry, they can expect to see some major flooding as well. For areas away from the major river systems, as this rain intensifies tonight, you can expect to see some more flash flooding as we've seen over previous nights. So we're asking people along the central coast of New South Wales, so in particular around the central coast, the Blue Mountains as well, Sydney Metropolitan District and the Illawarra, which should deteriorate again after some reprieve today, just to stay on top of the forecasts and warnings. We do have a severe weather warning out that highlights the area of risk for flash flooding. There are several flood warnings out, and those flood warnings they'll be updated regularly through the night as the catchments respond to the rain that's fallen, and we see some upstream rises on our gauge. We can fine tune the river heights a bit better. And with that, I'll hand over to Carleen York. Thank you.
Thank you. So what we have is a particularly serious event that is escalating, has escalated over the days, and is forecast to escalate over the night. So we want the community to be aware of their risk. As stated by the Bureau, we're anticipating that these levels will rise above the last 18 months of flood levels. So it is important to not expect that if you survived and if your house survived and didn't get wet on the last occasion, or your buildings, that you need to rethink that strategy. Just because it got to the front doorstep on the last floods doesn't mean that it won't escalate overnight. There's significant water in the dam. They're all over 100% at the moment. We've got a large amount of water in our river systems flowing down into our various communities that have been mentioned, as well as the possibility of extensive rain in discrete areas that will add to the danger. So flash flooding becomes a real risk for our communities. So I'm asking the community to be aware. We're having these messages go out now so that you can make decisions now. It's very difficult to make them in the middle of the night, and if you are concerned, now is the time to make the preparation and perhaps leave your home. Keep on top of all the Bureau's warnings, as well as those warnings that the New South Wales SES put on our website. As spoken by the Minister, have an emergency kit ready to go, but also have a radio with batteries so that you can listen and be able to get the up-to-date messages if the power does go out. There's a significant risk to power across a large number of these areas because of the risk of trees down and debris and flood waters flowing through these communities. So be aware and be able to get that information. That's really important so that you can make those safe and sensible decisions. During the night time, we are asking that you don't travel where it's not necessary. It's very difficult to identify floodwaters on roads at night, and it's almost impossible to identify how deep those waters are, and it doesn't take much for a vehicle to be washed away in up to about a foot of water, where it can have a significant disastrous effect. We want the communities to be safe. I don't want to be reporting any loss of life here at any future press conferences. So again, be aware of the risk, take those provisions. We've had a large number also of rescues in relation to rural animals. So, as the Minister said, the priority is saving lives, and we will try and get out there to help those rural locations. But we really want to make sure that people make good decisions so that our emergency services do not have to go out and do any more flood rescues by people driving through floodwaters. We are there to help the community. So again, a reminder, 132 500 is the number to ring to get SES assistance, but if it is life-threatening, 000 is the number. Again, I will just end on the message that this could get significantly worse over the night. So make safe decisions now, look after yourselves, look after friends and families that might be in this area, and make sure that everyone can get through the night and into tomorrow in a safe way. Thank you.
How concerned, just in terms of North Richmond and Windsor, how many properties are you really concerned about in that area? Are we talking hundreds? Are we talking dozens? Like how many?
There's in the hundreds to thousands of homes in these areas that are put at risk, and they may be under an evacuation warning, which is significant as well as an evacuation order. And we will escalate, as I often say, is to an order through doing a warning into those communities, but sometimes that's not possible with the extent of rain. So we ask that those communities really be aware of the messaging that we're putting out. But there are, thousands of people that are affected by what we're looking at tonight and during today.
How many calls of help have you had so far?
So we've had requests for assistance over 1,800. Going through the 132 500, that does not count the 000 calls for assistance as well. So it's really important. We have put on extra call takers to get us through this period, but it's really important that people make those decisions, so hopefully they won't have to call. But those requests for assistance are obviously storm related as well. A lot of trees down, vehicles have been damaged, homes and roofs have been damaged, which results in community members really needing our assistance from emergency service agencies.
There have been reports that a man has died in Sydney floodwaters while in a kayak in Hawkesbury. Do you have any more information on that, or can we get a comment on that?
I do. I'll hand to Deputy Commissioner Thurtell for that.
Yes, thanks very much. Yeah, those reports are correct. That matter is being investigated by police. I'm told that Polair did turn up to rescue that person. Unfortunately, he was deceased before that rescue attempt was completed, and the body was retrieved by the Water Police.
Can you clarify whether that was a flood death or not?
No, not specifically. The incident occurred in Sydney Harbour near Canada Bay. It may well be related to the windy conditions, but the actual incident is being investigated. I'm told that there were witnesses that indicate that he fell out of a kayak. So the circumstances surrounding it is still to be investigated.
And just for Commissioner York or the Minister, the Windsor Bridge last year went under during those flood levels. Can you tell us about the status of that bridge right now?
I'm not sure about the flood levels, but with the forecast of the Bureau that we will go above the flood levels of last year, it is anticipated, if it's not already under, it could go under. So I suppose the message also is some houses may not be affected, but please be aware that your evacuation route might be cut off. So live traffic can assist you with any up-to-date information. And if you do have to travel and you do want to evacuate, just check where you're going and make sure it's safe to do so.
This might be one for Jane. Just in terms of the time frame, so we're looking at sort of rainfall might escalate sort of overnight, and then are we expected to get a reprieve tomorrow? Or?
Yeah, so the system, I think it'll be at its worst tonight. So that system comes, it crosses the coast before midnight, it looks like, from the guidance. And then it'll start to weaken. So it'll take a bit of time to weaken, but I'd say tomorrow it should have eased quite a bit during the day.
And when it came to March and April, we saw that initial burst, and then a few days later, worse again. Do you have any forecasts for what might come in coming days, whether there will be a sting in the tail like last time, or is this going to be 48-hour quick hit?
So there's no other systems on the chart similar to what we're seeing now in the next couple of days, next week. But there's continued showers coming in. They'll probably be heavy at times. But we're not seeing anything similar to what we're seeing now in the next week. This is East Coast low season, unfortunately, so there could be something else in the next few weeks that typically runs from January, February through to the end of July, where we see these types of tight low pressure systems off the coast. But yeah, not in the next week.
I think a lot of people thought with La Nina being over that they aren't going to see this much rain again. So is this normal for this time of year, like you mentioned?
We get systems like this most years, and when they cross the coast, they bring a lot of rain. So we're back in the neutral phase of the ENSO cycle, but there's other climate drivers out there. So at the moment, looking around Australia, we're getting influences from the Indian Ocean, which is in phase to produce more moisture into New South Wales. We've got warm waters off the tropics as well, so a lot of this moisture's come down from that direction. And we've got warm waters off the Pacific, so those inputs aren't likely to change regardless of La Nina. So La Nina's not the only thing, and we get East Coast lows most years, and they pack a punch when they come close to the coast.
Minister, can you give us an idea of tonight how it's going to play out, just in terms of, you know, all the resources being thrown at North Richmond and Windsor, and how this is going to be monitored and managed overnight?
Well, we've certainly got resources in place right up and down the coast. I mean, we've been talking for the last couple of days about Newcastle to Bateman's Bay. So we've got resources in place, but there's no doubt that the Sydney Metropolitan, the Hawkesbury, Nepean area is definitely our area of focus. And so to that end, we've got all of our emergency services organisations all putting resources in place, supporting the SES as the combat agency. So we've got strike teams from Fire and Rescue pre-positioned. We've got the Rural Fire Service has got a number of brigades, particularly out in that area, helping the SES door knock as we speak, and they're taking taskings from the SES as required. And we've got the Sydney Metropolitan Zone of the SES working around the clock. They have been for a few days now, and they are working very closely with the local units, of which there are almost 30. But Commissioner York will probably be able to provide some further clarification there. But those SES units are working around the clock in those communities. So we've also got marine rescue and surf lifesaving on standby should an incident arise along the coast where we need them to step up and give us a hand. So right across the board, we are working together very, very well, as we always do in these types of emergencies, but obviously on high alert tonight, given the escalating situation. I might ask Commissioner York if she'd like to add anything further to what I've said then. Thank you.
So in the areas that are of high risk, we brought in additional resources from other areas to assist the units that are there. As the Minister says, there's probably 30 units located across the high risk areas, but we've called on other metropolitan resources as well to be able to help the community in these particular areas. So as the Minister said, working with other emergency service agencies, working with the police and calling out the resources that we need to make sure that we can help the community.
Camden has been pretty badly hit as well. What are we expecting for that region tomorrow and overnight?
I might hand to Jane Golding from the Bureau just in relation to the weather forecast overnight, but I think we've all seen the vision in relation to Camden and its record floods for that area, and thankfully everyone was safe. We got a lot of calls for assistance from that area today. Some of the flood levels are up, to the roofs of service stations and inundation of businesses and homes, and it's particularly troubling to see those images. So we just want to make sure that everyone, again, understands the risk, and I suppose those images remind us of exactly what can happen due to this significant rain event. The important thing to remember of why this is somewhat different than years in the past, not the 18 months, is we've had so much rain, the ground is saturated and there's just really nowhere to soak it in. The dams are full, so they're not able to catch the rain as well. And that, again, leads to significant riverine flooding and the flash flooding moving across the ground very quickly. Did you want to ask about Camden?
Yeah, so Camden saw a lot of rain last night. I believe higher than we've seen in a month of July, just in 24 hours at our site there. And unfortunately, they'll see a deterioration again tonight, so that rain associated with that low as it moves closer will affect that area. Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks.